Why, hello folks. Today we're going to be talking about my favorite Warframe, which is Equinox. You usually see me walking around with this Equinox in my videos, and that is because I am one of the few Equinox mains out there. It's funny, like I don't see Equinox all that often when I play missions and see like just what other people play. But Equinox is strong. She's very strong. She is, if you go to like the Warframe tier list, she is listed as one of the A tier Warframes. Kind of middle of the pack. I think she's like ranked at like number 25 out of 50, so like exactly middle of the pack. Still A tier. So you might be wondering, like, why am I suggesting that an A tier Warframe needs to be reworked? Why am I not talking about other Warframes that are more in dire need of reworks, like Hydroid or Valkyr? Well, people. Well, first of all, I have talked about the fact that those Warframes need to be reworked. There are already videos on this channel about that, so don't worry about it. I've covered that as well. But this one is a bit different because I want to talk about sort of just design goals and like how you build and design a Warframe and what it's meant to do, and how a Warframe is designed should reinforce how you want that Warframe to be played. And if there's something in the design that sort of prevents you from playing the Warframe the way it's meant to be played, then that's probably a mistake, and that's probably something that should be adjusted. And I think it will probably like raise the stock of Equinox, and you actually see Equinox more in missions if you were to do something like this. What I'm going to talk about here is based on, currently Equinox Prime is in Varzia's rotation for Prime Resurgence. So now you can farm, for Aya, and you can use Aya to go to Marus Bazaar. And you can buy relics that you can crack open to farm for Equinox Prime. And because of that, like Warframe has put out like a webpage showing different build guides for Equinox, as it were. Build guides made by larger content creators than myself. Now, okay, people. I'm not gonna say that Brozim stole my Gloom Equinox build. I'm not gonna say it. I'm just gonna say that, I have 3,600 hours playing Warframe, and if you look at my profile, you'll see that that's 51.8% Equinox. So I have like close to 2,000 hours of Equinox played, and I've done a lot of Helminth build guides, and as soon as Gloom came out, I immediately saw that like, oh, this is Equinox's ability. I put out a build guide for Gloom Equinox. I am 100% sure that I was the first person to explain exactly why this build is so good. And how you get like the double dipping on Gloom's effect from the stagger effect from Maim and stuff like that. Like anyway, I'm sure his build is fine too. I haven't watched the video. I'm sure it's fine. All right. Look. Here's my point. I saw that listing, like that page that Warframe put out with different Equinox guides. And you know what they have in common? What they have in common is that they present versions of Equinox. Here is a build for night form Equinox. Here is a build for day form Equinox. And this is the root of the problem. It shouldn't be like that. It should be a build for Equinox. Not day form Equinox, not night form Equinox. And like this is how I play Equinox as well. I play day form Equinox. I have replaced Metamorphosis. That's what you do with the Helminth system. You replace the ability to switch forms between day form and night form, because you're only gonna want to be in one or the other. Either you play night form Equinox or you play day form Equinox. If someone is an Equinox player and they talk about how their build, they don't say, oh yeah, I play Equinox. No, they don't. They say, I play day form Equinox or I play night form Equinox. You don't play both. And that is a bit of an issue, I think. Because the whole thing about Equinox that makes her so cool is that she's 2 Warframes. Right? She's supposed to be able to switch forms. So you got your night form Equinox, right? And then you can switch and boom, you become your day form Equinox. And that is the whole appeal of the Warframe. That's why it's so hard to craft it, because you have to farm for like both the night form and the day form, and it's like 8 different parts and stuff. But the way that Equinox is designed does not promote actually doing that. That is the problem. So let me explain why. Let's just go to a standard build, or like just with nothing here. You got your metamorphosis and everything. Right. So, here's the thing. When you switch from night form to day form, you get a little bonus for a while. That's fine. You get more shields and armor when you're in night form. You get damage and speed in day form. You got your number 2. You can sleep enemies, a defensive ability, in night form. Or if you're in day form, enemies take more damage, but they also become faster. So it's offensive. It's glass cannon. It's like a risky thing, but you get more damage. You got pacify and provoke. In night form, enemies, their damage decreases. So they don't hurt you as much. A defensive ability. In day form, you get more ability strength. So it's an offensive ability. You do more damage with your abilities. And then, of course, Mend and Maim, the alt. Which is like when you're in night form. When you kill enemies, you regenerate shields. And then you can detonate all of your stored damage to refill shields and health. Purely defensive. When you're in day form, then you do more damage. Or like you do slash procs on enemies around you, and you build up a nuke when you kill enemies. And then when you detonate, you just explode the entire screen and everything dies. So you're only getting one or the other. If you're in night form, you are all defense. When you're in day form, you are all offense. But you're not both at the same time. Now compare this to like most other Warframes, right? Where they have abilities that synergize and give you both at the same time. Say your newest bad boy on the block, Revenant, right? He has abilities, so it's like, oh, yeah, he has an ability that makes him immortal. But then he also has abilities that synergize with that. So you can create thralls. And then you can reave through thralls to kill them, an offensive ability. But doing that regenerates stacks of mesmer skins. So you can keep your immortality. So you have your defensive ability and you have your offensive ability at the same time. It's not like an either or scenario. And it's going to be like that for most Warframes. That you have some abilities that are defensive and some abilities that are offensive. Like that's how Gauss works. That's how Gara works. That's how most Warframes work. But not Equinox. So in that regard, it's sort of a bit like Baruch, for example. You dodge all incoming projectiles. You can't get shot. No enemies can shoot at you. But it only works when you're not attacking. Because this is like a problematic ability, the whole idea of like you can't get both at the same time. You can't both attack and defend. That's like an ability that's made for a different game. That's not what Warframe is like. You don't have downtime between attacks. You're like constantly on the offense. Like I could see the idea of Equinox being able to switch forms and going on the defensive for a while and then switch forms and then going on the offense for a while. If Warframe was a much slower, like more of a tactical shooter or whatever, that's not at like this breakneck pace that it is at today. But currently it's like enemies are constantly shooting at you, you are constantly shooting at enemies. You cannot switch between offense and defense. That's just not how Warframe works. It's not how the game is played today. And that's the first issue. The second issue is that you can't even make it coherent with how you build Equinox. Because night form and day form have different synergies with your stats. That's another issue. The biggest one, obviously, the really, really biggest one, is that like your number 1, it scales with strength in both day form and night form. Your number 2, it scales with strength both in day form and night form. Your number 3, it scales with strength both in day form and night form. Your number 4 doesn't scale with strength. Like, especially not in day form. And this is the most important ability, at least if you're playing day form Equinox. You use your maim. So, it's clunky because if you just build for maim in day form, then you want to go for 0 ability strength. But mend, the night form version, the healing version, that's way less relevant. Night form Equinox doesn't care all that much about mend. Night form Equinox cares way more about rest, being able to sleep enemies. And it's like, so you're kind of gimping yourself if you're trying to build for both at the same time. If you're trying to build both night form and day form at the same time, and it's detrimental. You gain more. You can build a much more efficient build if you focus on just one form, either day form or night form, and then you can really build for what makes that form work. So again, it's like it's a build that's like preventing itself from doing what it's supposed to be doing. Now, there are some augment mods we're going to talk about that are kind of like band-aids in a way, where they try to mitigate this. There are 2 sort of band-aid mods that they have created to encourage people to switch between forms. One is Duality and one is Energy Transfer. Energy Transfer says that like you conserve your charge. You keep your charge on Mend and Maim when you switch forms. This is a big one. Because without this augment, when you switch forms, you deactivate your number 3 and your number 4 abilities, the channeled abilities. That's another thing. That's another thing where it's like the game is punishing you for switching forms. You can have been playing day form, right? You're building up your nuke. You're building up your nuke. You're building up your nuke. You have a ton of sword damage here. And it's like, oh shit, things are getting dicey. What if I switch forms to my defensive abilities and try to like heal and regain some shields and enemies damage me less so I can get out of the situation? Okay, that boom, all of your stored damage from Maim is gone. Now you just have to start from scratch again. So you just got punished for switching forms, which feels awful. So the energy transfer is a way of like, okay, no, you get to keep your charge when you're switching forms. This, like we often talk about how like some aura mods or like some augment mods are band-aids, and there's like, oh, this should just be how the Warframe normally works. This shouldn't be an augment. In the case of energy transfer, 100%, like more than any other augment mod, this should not be an augment mod. This should just be how Equinox works. You should not need to put in a mod to make this happen. And I'm gonna offer a suggestion for a little bit later on for how you could build Equinox instead, or redesign Equinox, or tweak how these abilities work to accomplish that. The other one is Duality. Duality is a cool one because it makes it so that when you switch forms, you get to keep the other form as sort of a Wukong clone that sticks around for a while, and it deals extra damage. So you get to play as both day form and night form on the battlefield at the same time. It's you and your clone. Now this is a cool mod. The problem is like this mod was released before the Wukong rework, and before Wukong got his clone. And now it's like, in comparison to the Wukong clone, this is this is max upgrade. It lasts for 10 seconds. It scales with duration, but at base duration, it lasts for 10 seconds. And hey, guess what? When you build Equinox, even if you don't do like a Gloom thing that I do, you don't really build for duration, because Equinox is mostly about channeled abilities. And you have like this combination of duration of efficiency where you have negative duration and instead maxed out efficiency to get like the least amount of drain. You tweak the numbers a bit, but something like this is what you want it to look like. So it's, again, it doesn't work. You're being punished for like just sort of building an efficient build, because now Duality is only gonna last for like 6 seconds or something, compared to the Wukong clone that just lasts forever, right? It just lasts forever. Yeah, sure, this one deals 300% extra damage when this mod is maxed out, but it's just a clone, it's a Spectre, it's not that intelligent. And now especially with the ammo nerfs, right? With the ammo rework, and your clone using the same ammo pool as you are, this just became even worse. You used to be able to like use like really ammo draining weapons, stuff like the Kuva Comb, for example. It's pretty good with the Spectre when you don't have to worry about running out of ammo, but now you do. So now Duality, a mod that was like already not very good, and builds that weren't all very good already, they also got hit as collateral damage to the Wukong nerf. So now Duality builds are even worse than they were before, which is kind of a because it's so cool. I like the concept of Duality. I like that when you switch to your day form, your night form sticks around, and you have a Spectre, and you can both Equinoxes are in the battlefield at the same time. It's so cool. The idea of switching forms, and you're getting bonuses for doing so, right? You're getting rewarded for switching forms. That's what it should be. Because this is the heart of the matter. When I look at Equinox and how Equinox was designed, with a night form and a day form, I have to imagine that the design goal was that you were supposed to be switching forms. That was supposed to be the gameplay loop of Equinox. Whereas like, oh, you play as night form for a while, and then boom, switch to day form. And then you play as day form for a while, and then boom, switch to night form. That is like how I envision the idea of Equinox being, because it's 2 Warframes. And that would be so cool if you saw that in the gameplay, when you saw other Equinox players, that you saw them flipping between these 2 modes, and you saw that they leave a Spectre behind, and that one's also like tagging along on the action. Thematically, it's like, why is Wukong 2 monkeys, right? Why is not Equinox 2 Warframes? That's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be 2 Warframes, Jesus. But then everything around it is sort of punishing you for doing that. It's not efficient. It's like, it doesn't work to have a gameplay loop where you have defense 50% of the time and you have offense 50% of the time, because then you're just gonna die as soon as you switch to offense. You need to have both at the same time. That's why I have to run Gloom, to slow down enemies and to heal them, because otherwise Dayform Equinox is very squishy and can't take a hit. So you have to use the Helminth to give it like defensive capabilities. Or you run Nightform Equinox, in which case you use the rest ability to sleep enemies. And then you use, I don't know, you use Helminth abilities like Marked for Death, and then you explode entire rooms that way. So you turn the defensive ability into an offensive ability. But that's the same thing. You have to use the Helminth ability to give the defensive Equinox something to use as offense. And you just use the Helminth to give the offensive ability something to use as defense, because you can't just rely on Metamorphosis, because you don't get both at the same time, and you have to have both at the same time, otherwise you die. So here is my suggestion. Here's my suggestion for how Equinox should work. You should be switching forms. The gameplay loop should be that you are switching forms constantly, and you need to be rewarded for doing so. It needs to be the efficient way of playing Equinox. It needs to be reinforced with the mechanics of the Warframe so that switching forms is something you want to do. Not something that you do reluctantly because you're role-playing and you want it to feel like it's supposed to feel, but you know you're gimping yourself. That shouldn't be it. Switching forms constantly should be the best way of playing Equinox. And I've always talked about this. I've talked about this many times where like I like skill testing stuff. I like things that are mechanically complex. Because I don't want Warframe to be a cookie clicker that plays itself and you just activate some ability and then you go to sleep and then the game just goes on autopilot. No, I want gameplay where you're supposed to be super active and you're supposed to have constant inputs and the game reacts to your inputs. That's fun to me. That's how I want Equinox to work as well. So, here is my suggestion for how Equinox should work. Number 1, switch the passive. Equinox has a passive where you get a little bit of energy when you pick up health orbs, and you get a little bit of health when you pick up energy orbs. It's like sort of inconsequential. You can use something better here. Here is my suggestion. Here's what the passive should be. When you switch forms for 20 seconds, all of the previous forms, previous abilities should remain active. That's it. You don't need energy transfer. Just when you switch forms for 20 seconds, all of the previous stuff remains active. That also goes for the buffs to your damage, and the buffs to your speed, and the buffs to your shield, and the buffs to your armor that you get for a little while when you switch forms. Because that's also a little bonus you get. Yeah, keep that. Keep that. So you can get both at the same time. If you're switching forms constantly, then you get the damage multiplier, you get the speed increase, you get more shields, you get more armor. Yes, you get rewarded for switching forms. Rest and Rage, that one it's not a channeled ability. You cast it on enemies, so that one doesn't need to be affected by this at all. You can already do that. You can cast Rage on enemies so that they take more damage, but they also get faster. But then you can switch to night form and sleep them, right? To negate the speed increase. That works. That's something you can do today. So this is also an ability that kind of wants you to switch forms. Except you don't switch forms, because there are so many negatives associated with doing that, so you don't do it. Pacify and Provoke. When you're in day form, you get more ability strength. When you're in night form, enemies deal less damage. That's fine. If you switch forms, this remains active for 20 seconds. You can have both buffs active at the same time. Great. And of course, Mend and Maim. Same thing here. When you switch forms, it straight up just remains active for 20 seconds. You have to keep track of timers. It becomes a gameplay loop where you're supposed to switch forms all the time. You're supposed to switch forms all the time. Now, I also want to say this. Change the scaling of Mend and Maim. Change the damage accumulation on both Mend and Maim to scale with strength, because everything else scales with strength. But if you want to be effective with a Mend and Maim build, you just cut your strength down to 0. You have like 40% ability strength, because strength for Maim only affects the slash proc damage, but it doesn't affect the damage accumulation. And the damage accumulation is the nuke. And when you play harder levels of content, the nuke is what you're after, and not the little slash proc. So, if that one also scales with ability strength, suddenly you don't have to gimp all of your other abilities just to make your ult work. There are many other ways you can do that, but I'll just throw that out as like a suggestion. So if you do that, if you just make the passive, let all of the abilities just stay active for like a couple of seconds, 20 seconds or something, so it doesn't become too hectic and you don't accidentally lose all of your shit too often. Then you don't need energy transfer anymore. Energy transfer, maybe you can just keep that so that like, oh yeah, it just removes the timer, right? So you don't have to worry about it. But energy transfer shouldn't exist. This shouldn't be an augment in the first place. And then then Duality starts becoming fun. Because if everything is active for 20 seconds, what that means is that you're incentivized to switch forms every 10 seconds. To always keep the buffs up from both. And if you have that, then you can have your Duality in your build, which means that Duality is always gonna be active. If you switch forms every 10 seconds, then your Duality Spectre is always going to be there. It's not like the best in the world, but it's fun and it's kind of cool and it does help out a bit. And there are still some weapons that are good with a Duality build, like the Proboscis Cernos, for example. Yeah, like that's really it. That's all you have to do to make Equinox what Equinox was always supposed to be, which is a Warframe that is 2 Warframes, and where you're supposed to switch forms and you're supposed to play as both Warframes at the same time. And then you wouldn't remove the metamorphosis. If you're going to helmet something, it would be something else. Maybe the number 3 in that case would be the only thing that you could helmet away. I don't know. But that's what I want to see. Just give me a reason to switch forms. Don't punish me for switching forms. Don't make me hurt my build and make me lose my progress and make me lose everything I've been working toward if I switch forms. I don't want to be a day form Equinox player. I don't want to be a night form Equinox player. I want to be an Equinox player. Right? So that's my suggestion, my humble suggestion. And I throw it out now because currently Equinox is in the Prime rotation for Prime Resurgence. So there are some people out there who are farming for Equinox Prime and kind of want to know what the deal is. And then maybe we won't have a situation where Warframe are putting out suggestions for people to have half the fun by only playing one of the 2 forms and make the Warframe less cool than it can be. Equinox is so unique because it has so many abilities. Equinox, at its core design, she's got like 7 abilities. The ability to switch form, and then her number 2 is actually 2 abilities. Her number 3 is 2 abilities. Her number 4 is 2 abilities. It's got 7 different abilities. And if you can use all 7, and you have like a gameplay loop that reinforces doing that, that's so cool. That would be like the most sort of complex but still coherent Warframes out there that feels super different from everything else. That's why I like playing Limbo. I like playing Limbo because Limbo feels different from every other Warframe. It just doesn't play the same. It's like you're playing a different game in some ways. That's what Equinox could be too. It could be one of the coolest and most fun and most complex and just intriguing Warframes out there if you just give us a reason to switch forms instead of punishing us for switching forms. That's it. That's all you gotta do. So there's my humble suggestion for why this A-tier Warframe should be reworked. Or like why it should be reworked. Despite the fact that Equinox is strong. Everyone knows Equinox is strong. That's not the problem. The problem is that it's designed in such a way where you can't have as much fun with this Warframe as I think was intended when she was made. And it's not even that hard to fix her. That's it. That's it, people. That's the video. Leave your comments. Let me know. Are there what's your favorite Warframe that probably doesn't? It's probably not a priority to rework because there are other Warframes that are more in desperate need of reworks, but that you still can see that like, oh, here's one thing that's not working as intended or not working the way it could be working. What other Warframes are there that you'd have to play for 2,000 hours to really, really be able to see what it should be compared to what it is? I'm sure you're more knowledgeable about your main than I would be. But I am an Equinox main, so I've got opinions about Equinox. Alright. That's it. That's my opinion. Thanks for listening as always. And I will see you guys tomorrow for something completely different.